The afternoon sun of Dry Creek settled heavy on the horizon, turning the sky the color of blood and copper. Dust rolled through the town like a restless spirit, clinging to wagon wheels, boots, and secrets. On that breathless day, Clara Warren stepped down from the stagecoach with a small boy clasped in her arms. 5 years old, pale-skinned but dark-eyed, his hair as black as night-fallen ash. No one in Dry Creek had seen her before, but gossip traveled faster than the wind. A widow, someone whispered. No husband, no ring. Another voice murmured, that child's eyes ain't no white man's eyes. Clara pretended not to hear. She'd learned long ago that silence was armor, and dignity, her only shield. She rented a room above the mercantile, worked mending clothes, and taught her son Samuel to keep his head down. Yet sometimes, when the light caught him just right, she'd see the shadows of another face in his features. The curve of a cheekbone too strong, the quiet steadiness in his stare. She'd press him to her chest then, as if by holding him close, she could erase the past that lived in his blood. Weeks passed before Taza rode into town. He came without warning, tall, proud, wrapped in buckskin and silence. An Apache warrior. His braids were tied with red thread, his eyes like the edge of flint. He'd come to trade hides and copper jewelry, though the townsfolk met him with the same mixture of fear and curiosity they gave to all men, who reminded them of the wilderness they could never tame. Clara saw him first from the window. The air left her lungs. She had dreamed that face more times than she'd dared to admit, dreamed of his hands, his voice, the way he had once whispered her name in the dark before the world tore them apart. But dreams were safer than truth. She turned away quickly, clutching Samuel's hand. Down in the street, Taza had not yet seen her. But when the boy looked up from where he stood near the hitching post, something in the warrior stilled. His gaze fixed on the child, his breath caught. The boy tilted his head, studying him in return with the same fierce curiosity. Two mirrors, one forged by time, one by fate, stared into each other. Taza's voice came low and harsh in his own tongue, though no one else understood. My blood? Samuel's eyes widened, though he said nothing. Then Clara appeared in the doorway, pale as the desert moon. Her shawl slipped from her shoulders when she saw him, when she realized that he had recognized the truth written in the boy's face. Taza crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. His shadow fell over her like a storm cloud. The boy, he said in rough English, his tone both accusation and plea. He is mine. Clara swallowed hard. You have no right to say that. His jaw tightened. His eyes are the eyes of my people. The street went quiet. The shopkeeper stopped counting his coins. The blacksmith's hammer froze mid-air. Clara could feel the weight of every gaze. The fear, the curiosity, the judgment. I don't know what you think you see, she whispered, her voice trembling. But he's my son. Mine alone. Taza's nostrils flared as he looked between her and the boy. His gaze softened for a fleeting second, then hardened again. You can lie to the white men, he said, but not to the wind. The blood remembers. Clara felt the ground sway beneath her feet. The words were a blade cutting open the wound she'd spent years trying to close. She gathered Samuel into her arms and stepped back. Leave us be, she said. The past is dead. Taza's eyes burned. Then why does it breathe before me? He turned, mounting his horse without another word. As he rode away, the dust swallowed him whole, but not before Clara saw him glance once more over his shoulder, at the boy who carried his face. And in that long, aching silence after, she whispered to herself, only if you believe the blood remembers. 5 years earlier, Clara had been a bride-to-be on a journey westward. Her father's wagon train moved slow through the desert. 30 souls bound for a patch of land near the San Pedro River. She'd worn her mother's locket and dreamed of white fences and quiet mornings, not the chaos that would change everything she was. It happened at dawn. The sky was pink with promise when the first arrow struck the lead wagon. Horses screamed, men shouted, and the desert exploded into fire and smoke. Clara remembered the smell of burning canvas, the sound of her father's rifle cracking again and again, and the blur of faces, fear, fury, death. When the Apache riders thundered in from the ridges, the world became a storm of dust and blood. She ran, clutching the hem of her skirt, until a blow to the head threw her into darkness. When she woke, it was to the flicker of a campfire and the ache of a fever that burned through her bones. Her wrists were bound, but the knot was loose, almost careful. Shadows moved nearby, men speaking in low tones. The language was strange, rhythmic, like the hum of wind through canyon walls. Then he appeared, Taza. He wasn't like the others. His movements carried no cruelty, only strength, tempered by quiet purpose. His face was painted in the colors of the hunt, but his eyes, they didn't hold malice. They held something she couldn't name. He spoke softly in broken English. "You are safe. You will live." Clara tried to move, to sit, but pain dragged her back down. "Why?" she rasped. "Why keep me alive?" Taza's jaw flexed. "Because death is easy. Life is harder." Then he placed a damp cloth on her brow and walked away. In the days that followed, Clara drifted between fever and waking. Taza was always there. He fed her broth made from corn and herbs, cleaned the cuts on her arms, and spoke to her in a mixture of Apache and English. At first she thought he was mocking her, playing some cruel game. But soon she saw the truth in his gaze, pity, perhaps even care. Once she tried to escape. The desert was vast, silent, and cold beneath 1,000 stars. She made it only a mile before collapsing in the sand. When she awoke again, Taza was beside her, his face tight with anger and worry. "You run," he said, "and the desert eats you." "I'd rather the desert eat me than your people," she snapped. He didn't flinch. "Then you do not yet know my people." From then on, something changed between them. He began teaching her words, tu, she, you, me. She taught him others, sun, water, home. They laughed over their mistakes. He called her white dove, mocking her gentleness, and she called him stone because he seemed carved from it. But sometimes in the evenings, when the firelight flickered against his face and his voice softened, the stone seemed to breathe. One night, when the camp slept, Taza told her his story. His father had been a chief, his mother killed by white soldiers when he was a boy. "I learned not to trust your kind," he said, "until you fell from the sky and did not curse me for saving you." Clara met his gaze, her heart caught between guilt and wonder. "I should hate you," she whispered, "but I can't." "Then don't," he murmured. It was the beginning of something neither of them could stop. For weeks they lived in that fragile peace, somewhere between captor and companion. When he reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. When he brushed her hair from her face, her heart beat like thunder. And when he finally kissed her, slow, uncertain, as if afraid she might vanish, she forgot the world that had once belonged to her. But peace in the desert never lasts. One dawn, as the sun broke over the canyon, the camp was attacked by U.S. soldiers. Clara woke to gunfire and shouting. Smoke filled the sky. Taza pushed her toward the horses, shouting in his language, but chaos swallowed them both. She never saw him fall. She only ran, through the smoke, through the screams, until she reached the open plain, trembling, alive, and terribly alone. She didn't know then that she carried his child. The wind over Dry Creek carried the scent of rain and something heavier, suspicion. By the time night fell, everyone in town had heard the story. The Apache came for her, they whispered over whiskey and lamplight. Said the boy was his. No one dared confront her outright, but the way the townsfolk looked at Clara now had changed. The blacksmith's wife crossed the street when she passed. The preacher's daughters no longer came for sewing lessons. Inside her small cabin on the edge of town, Clara tried to keep her trembling from showing as she latched the door. Samuel sat by the fire, playing with the wooden horse she had carved for him. His small face was calm, but there was a shadow in his eyes she had never seen before. "Mama," he said softly. "Who was that man?" Her hands froze. "No one," she lied too quickly. "Just a traitor." "He looked like me," the boy said, tilting his head, innocent and curious. Same eyes. Clara's throat tightened. "Go to bed, sweetheart." But long after he fell asleep, she sat awake, staring into the dying fire. Every creak of the wind outside made her flinch. She knew he would come again. The way he had looked at her, the way he had looked at Samuel, told her there would be no peace until he heard the truth, and she feared that truth as much as she feared him. It was well past midnight. When the knock came, 3 heavy raps, measured. Unhurried, Clara froze. Then another knock, harder this time. She rose, heart pounding, and reached for the small pistol hidden in her dresser. "Go away," she called, her voice trembling. A pause, then his voice low and steady through the door. Open white dove, her fingers went cold. No one else had ever called her that. Leave, she whispered. Please. Not until I see the boy. Clara's grip on the pistol tightened. You'll wake him. You'll frighten him. I have ridden through fire to find him, Taza said. You will not keep him from me. She knew then that the door would not stop him. Slowly, she unlatched it. Taza stood in the doorway, tall and silent, rain dripping from his hair and shoulders. His eyes burned like coals in the lantern light. For a moment, neither spoke. The years between them hung in the air, thick with the memory of what they once were. Then he stepped inside. Where is he? Clara tried to block his path. He's asleep. You can't just... But Taza brushed past her, drawn to the small bed in the corner. Samuel slept soundly, his dark lashes resting against his cheeks. Taza knelt beside him, his hand trembling as it hovered over the boy's head. His name? Samuel, Clara said softly. Not the name of my people, he murmured. No, she replied, her voice breaking. The name of mine. He looked up at her then, fury and heartbreak warring in his face. You stole him. You ran from me. I ran to save him, she cried. Do you think the soldiers would have spared us if they'd found me with you? They killed your people, Taza. They would have killed us both. His jaw tightened. Better to die with truth than live with lies. Her eyes flashed. You think I wanted this life? You think it's easy raising a child who looks like a ghost of the man I can't forget? For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain beat against the windows, the fire crackled low. Then Samuel stirred, blinking sleepily. Mama, Clara rushed to him. It's all right, darling. Go back to sleep. But the boy's gaze caught on Taza, and in that instant the warrior's anger faltered. Samuel's small hand reached out, resting on his arm with childlike trust. Something ancient passed between them, something neither language nor blood could deny. Taza swallowed hard. He has my mark. Clara followed his gaze to Samuel's wrist. There, beneath the lamplight, was a faint crescent scar, the same shape that curved across Taza's own skin. Her breath caught. It's coincidence, she said weakly. He rose to his full height, voice rough with conviction. No, the blood remembers. Then he turned and walked out into the storm, leaving her shaking, her son clinging to her skirts, and her heart divided between the past she'd buried and the truth that refused to die. By morning, Dry Creek was alive with whispers. The story had grown in the telling. By noon, the Apache had broken into her house, Yin claimed her boy, and threatened to take him back to the wilderness. Clara felt the stares before she saw them. Every face in town seemed to turn as she passed, every voice dropped to a murmur. When she stepped into the general store for flour, the chatter fell silent. Even the shopkeeper, old Mr. Carson, who'd always been kind, cleared his throat and said stiffly, "Mornin', Mrs. Warren." "Miss," she corrected automatically. He didn't look up from his ledger. "Heard you had a visitor last night." Clara's hands trembled. "You hear too much," he shrugged. "Hard not to. Folks talk when an Apache shows up claiming kin." Her heart thudded painfully. "That's nonsense." "Maybe," he said, finally meeting her eyes. "But you might want to keep that boy of yours inside for a while. There's men in this town who don't take kindly to that sort of talk." When she stepped out onto the street, the air felt heavier, the sun crueler. She pulled her shawl tight around her shoulders and hurried home. That evening, as she tried to sweep the porch, the preacher's wife came up the path, skirts swishing, Bible clutched to her chest. "Miss Warren," she said, voice sweet and sharp all at once. "We've been praying for you." Clara paused, wary. "That's kind." The woman smiled tightly. "The Lord forgives even grave mistakes. If you wish to repent, the church will take you back. Repent?" The woman's eyes flicked toward the cabin window where Samuel's small face watched them. "Children suffer for the sins of their mothers, you know." "The preacher says the boy should be raised proper, somewhere safe." Clara's blood turned to ice. "He is safe, with me." The woman's lips pursed. "Not if that Indian comes back for him." She left a tract on the step and walked away, skirts snapping in the wind. That night, Clara sat by the fire, the leaflet unopened on the table. Samuel asleep against her shoulder. She listened to the wind howling outside and wondered if she'd made a mistake staying. Maybe she should have gone west, where no one knew her, where her son could grow without suspicion shadowing every step. But leaving meant running again, and she was tired of running. Still, fear crept in like smoke through the cracks of her resolve. Near midnight, she heard a sound beyond the cabin, the faint crunch of boots on gravel. Her pulse quickened. She blew out the lamp and reached for the rifle by the door. The sound came closer. Clara. Her name, low and deep. Taza's voice. She hesitated, torn between anger and relief, before unlatching the door. He stood there in the moonlight, his hair loose, rain glistening on his shoulders. Behind him, the desert stretched silent and silver. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "They'll kill you if they see you." "They already wish to kill what they fear," he said softly. "Your people fear the child because they see me in him. Then you must go." "I will not," he said, eyes fierce. "Not until I know he is safe." She stared at him, torn apart by the memory of their past. "You've made everything worse. They'll take him from me if they think he's yours." His jaw set. "Then I will take you both where they cannot." Clara stepped back, shaking her head. "No, I won't raise him in war, in hiding. He deserves peace." "Peace is a lie told by men with guns," Taza said bitterly. "You think they'll let you keep him when they whisper Apache behind his name?" Her throat tightened. "He's half of both worlds. Maybe that means one day he can belong to both." Taza looked past her through the window where Samuel slept. For a long time he said nothing. Then he turned to go, his voice a whisper carried by the wind. "No child belongs to both. The blood will make him choose." And before she could call him back, he vanished into the desert, leaving only the echo of his words and the uneasy truth she dared not face. By dawn, Clara knew the town had turned against her, but the man she once loved had too in his own way. The air felt wrong that evening, too still, too watchful. Clara could sense it in the way the coyotes stopped howling, in the silence of the wind that usually sang through the cottonwoods. Even Samuel, usually chattering as he built his toy fences by the hearth, grew quiet. He looked up at her with those solemn, knowing eyes. "Mama," he whispered, "why do people look at me like they're scared?" Her heart cracked a little more. She knelt beside him, brushing a strand of dark hair from his brow. "Because they don't understand," she said softly. "And people often fear what they can't understand." He nodded slowly, then went back to his game. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the walls around them were too thin, that the dark outside was holding its breath. Ever since Taza's last visit, the town's mood had soured like spoiled milk. Rumors spread, men muttering about mixed blood and a warning for any woman who lay with an Apache. When the knock came, it wasn't gentle. It was the hard, angry pounding of men who'd already made up their minds. Clara froze, her blood turning to ice. She grabbed Samuel, pushing him toward the trapdoor beneath the rug, a small space she'd built when the talk in town had grown ugly. "Go," she whispered urgently. "Stay quiet no matter what happens." His small hands clung to her. "Mama, don't leave me." She forced a smile she didn't feel. "I'll be right here. I promise." The pounding grew louder. "Open up, Clara Warren," a voice bellowed. "We know what you're hiding in there." Clara slipped the boy into the space, closed the trapdoor, and pulled the rug back over it. Her hands shook as she reached for the rifle by the door. When she opened it, the night glared back. 5 men with torches and hate in their eyes. The one in front was the blacksmith, Jonas Pierce, his face twisted in righteous fury. "You're harboring a half-breed," he snarled. "You bring shame on every decent woman in this town." Clara lifted the rifle. "Leave my land, Jonas. You've got no right," he sneered. "No right?" "We got the Lord and the law on our side. You think you can birth an Indian's brat and live like nothing happened?" Her voice trembled, but she stood tall. "He's a child." "My child." "A mistake," another man muttered. Jonas stepped closer. "Hand him over. The preacher says the boy should be taken, raised proper." "We'll do what needs doing." Clara's stomach turned to stone. "You'll have to kill me first," he spat at her feet. "So be it." Then he swung his torch at the porch rail. Flames leapt instantly, hungry and bright. Clara fired. The shot cracked through the night, shattering the stillness. Jonas stumbled back, blood streaking his arm, and the other scattered, but not far. One hurled his torch through the window. Fire exploded across the curtains, the room filling with choking smoke. Coughing, Clara dropped the rifle, grabbing the bucket by the door, but it was no use. The fire roared too fast. She backed toward the trapdoor, praying the smoke wouldn't reach Samuel. "Stay quiet," she whispered beneath her breath. "Just a little longer, baby." A shout rang out outside. Then another. The men were regrouping, ready to storm the cabin. But before they could, the night erupted with a sound Clara would never forget, the sharp whistle of an arrow. Then another, then dozens. Screams tore through the dark. Horses reared. Men fell. Through the smoke and chaos, shadows moved, silent, swift. Apache riders burst from the hills, their faces painted, their bows gleaming in the firelight. The mob scattered, torches flying, and within moments the flames that had threatened to devour her became the signal of their own defeat. When Clara stumbled from the burning doorway, coughing and blinded by ash, strong arms caught her. "Taza!" she gasped. He held her close, his face smeared with soot and fury. "You think I would let them take what is mine?" Behind them, the cabin crackled and collapsed. She turned her face into his chest, half in relief, half in terror. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "Now they'll come for you." "I do not run from fire," he said simply. "I walk through it." When he bent to lift her, she didn't resist. Somewhere beneath them, Samuel stirred in the hidden space, crying softly for his mother. And when Taza lifted the rug to reach for him, Clara saw the gentleness in his hands, the same that had once saved her life. As dawn crept over the horizon, the cabin lay in ruins, the smoke rising toward a pale sky. And in that gray silence, Taza whispered against her ear, "Now you believe, white dove? I protect what is mine." Clara woke to the sound of a river whispering against its banks. The air smelled of pine and smoke, not the choking kind from her cabin, but the gentle scent of wood fire and sage. When she opened her eyes, the light was softer, filtered through canvas walls, a hide tent lined with woven blankets. Her body ached, her throat burned, but she was alive. And so was Samuel. He slept beside her, curled against a deerskin pillow, his small hand resting in hers. For a moment she could only stare at him, her chest tightening with gratitude and disbelief. Then as her eyes adjusted, she saw the shadow moving outside the tent. The flap lifted. Taza stepped inside. He looked different here, surrounded by his people. His presence filled the space, commanding, silent, calm. His hair was braided with red string, his chest bare except for the beaded pendant that hung against his skin. He carried the weight of authority, of belonging. "You are safe," he said, his deep voice even. "Your son sleeps." The fire did not touch him. Clara swallowed hard. "You brought us here." "Yes. You shouldn't have." A flicker crossed his face, something like hurt, though it was gone as quickly as it came. "Would you rather I let them burn you alive?" She looked down, shame washing through her. "No," she whispered. "But you know what this means. They'll come after us. They'll blame you." Taza crouched beside her, his gaze steady. "They already blame me for the sky, the rain, the hunger of the land. What is one more sin to them?" He stood and moved toward the tent flap. "Rest. When the sun is high, you will see where you are." When he left, Clara lay in silence, listening to the low hum of the camp outside. Children's laughter, women grinding corn, men's voices deep and steady in the distance. The sound was foreign, yet strangely peaceful. When she finally stepped outside, Samuel's hand in hers, she was met by a sea of color and motion. The Apache camp stretched along the river valley, smoke rising from cooking fires, horses grazing near the water. Women in bright skirts carried baskets of herbs. Men repaired weapons or painted symbols on hides. A few paused to look at her, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. Clara felt their eyes like stones against her back. She pulled Samuel close. Taza approached then, mounted on a paint horse, his bow slung across his back. The people parted as he rode through. He stopped beside her, dismounting with quiet grace. "They will not harm you," he said. "You are under my protection." "I'm not sure that comforts them," she said softly. He gave a faint smile. "No, but it comforts me." He led her through the camp, introducing her to the elders. The women spoke in their language, their faces unreadable. An old man, his hair white as bone, studied Samuel closely, then looked at Clara. "The boy has strong eyes," he said in Apache. "The father's spirit lives in him," Taza translated quietly. Clara nodded, though her throat tightened. She couldn't tell if it was approval or a warning. As the days passed, she began to see the rhythm of their life, the balance of survival and grace. The tribe moved like a single heartbeat, each person knowing their place, their duty. Samuel laughed freely again, running with the children, his dark hair catching the sunlight. Clara watched him from the shade, her heart aching with something she couldn't name. At night, When the fires burned low, she and Taza sat apart from the others, the silence between them heavy with everything unspoken. Sometimes he spoke of his people, their ways, their wounds. Sometimes she spoke of her world, of loss, of loneliness. "You could stay," he said one night, his voice barely more than a whisper. "You and the boy. I would make you my wife before my people." Clara stared into the fire. "And if I say no?" "Then you are free to leave," he said, though his voice cracked faintly. "But know this, freedom in your world means chains for the boy in mine." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't threatening her. He was afraid for the child, for her, for the war that would come if she tried to bridge two worlds that had never known peace. That night, as the moon rose silver over the river, Clara lay awake, listening to her son's soft breathing and Taza's low murmur outside the tent, praying to whatever God still listened that she would find the strength to choose the world her son belonged to, before both worlds tore him apart. That night the Apache camp was alive with the tension of truth. Fires burned low, casting long shadows over faces that had once looked upon Lila with suspicion. Now every glance toward her carried something sharper: curiosity, fear, and the hunger for answers. Koa, the elder medicine man, had declared a test of blood at dawn. Among the Apache it was a sacred rite, used only in times when destiny itself was uncertain. No one had spoken such words in a generation. Taza stood near the central fire, his arms crossed over his broad chest, face dark and unreadable. Across from him Lila sat with the boy in her arms. Samuel slept, his hand curled against her neck, unaware that his very blood was about to decide his place in the world. When Koa approached, the murmurs silenced. "The spirits demand clarity," the elder said, his deep voice carrying over the wind. "Blood remembers what mouths forget. If this child carries the fire of Taza's ancestors, the earth will answer." Lila's heart thudded painfully. She didn't believe in their magic, not really. But she couldn't ignore the way the tribe treated such rituals. In their eyes, this wasn't superstition. It was truth made visible. Taza didn't speak. He had barely spoken to her since the night before when he'd asked again, "Is he my son?" And she had answered, "Only if you believe the blood remembers." Her words had both wounded and strengthened him, pulling him between doubt and desperate hope. Now, he watched Koa prepare the ritual, 2 shallow cuts on each participant's palm. Their blood dripped onto a heated obsidian stone. The stone was believed to react, to crack, hiss, or glow, depending on the harmony between the two souls' blood. When the elder motioned for Lila to step forward, she rose with trembling legs. Samuel stirred, his eyelids fluttering open as she kissed his forehead. "It's all right, my heart," she whispered. "Mama's here." Taza came to stand beside her. His nearness was both a comfort and a torment. The scent of earth and smoke clung to him, and for the first time since she'd returned, she saw the man she had once loved, not the warrior, not the chief, but the man who had once whispered to her under starlight that love could bridge two worlds. Koa cut Lila's palm first. She winced but did not pull away. The elder then cut Taza's, their blood dripping onto the black stone together. A soft hiss filled the air and the crowd leaned in. Nothing happened. Then faintly the stone began to pulse. A glow, deep red and unsteady, like a heartbeat struggling to find rhythm. Koa's eyes widened. "There is connection," he said softly, "but it is buried, faded by time and pain." Taza's jaw tightened. That is not enough. Before anyone could stop him, he turned to Samuel and kneeled before the boy. "Your hand," he said, voice breaking. Lila froze. "Taza, he's just a child." But Samuel looked up at the warrior, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Without fear, he reached out his small hand. Taza made the lightest of cuts, then pressed the boy's palm over the stone, letting a few drops fall into the fading glow. The result was instant. The obsidian cracked down the middle, a sharp sound that echoed through the camp. A flash of bright crimson light flared, then sank into the earth. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Gasps erupted. Some whispered prayers. Others backed away in awe. Koa's voice shook. "The blood remembers," he said. "It has spoken." Lila pressed Samuel against her chest, her eyes filling with tears she couldn't name. Relief. Fear. Love. Taza stared at the broken stone, his face unreadable. Then slowly he looked up at Lila, his eyes burning not with anger but with something older, deeper. Recognition. The son he had once thought lost now stood before him. And the woman who had kept that secret still held his heart in her hands. The next morning, the Apache camp was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. No laughter, no song. Not even the usual sounds of children running through the dawn. Word of the blood test had spread through every tent and canyon trail. Everyone knew what the spirits had revealed. Taza's blood ran through the boy's veins. Lila woke to the sound of hooves outside her tent. Before she could rise, the flap opened and Taza stood there, his shadow filling the space. He looked every bit the warrior, bare chest painted with red earth, his long hair braided with eagle feathers. Yet there was something different in his eyes. Not the anger she had feared, but a heavy stillness. "Come," he said. "Bring the boy," she hesitated. "Where?" "To the council fire. They wait for you," her breath caught. The council. This wasn't a private matter anymore, it was tribal law, history, and honor intertwined. She wrapped Samuel in her shawl and followed him into the morning light. The camp had gathered in a wide circle around the fire. Koa sat among the elders, his expression grave. The women whispered as Lila passed. Some looked at her with awe, others with judgment. A white woman bearing the chief's son. No one could decide if it was miracle or blasphemy. Taza stopped before the fire and raised his hand for silence. "The earth has spoken," he said. "The spirits confirmed what my heart denied for years. The boy is mine." A ripple of voices spread through the crowd. "But his mother," one man said bitterly. "She is not of our people. She left us. She broke the circle." Lila's throat tightened. She wanted to defend herself. To tell them she had run because she'd been hunted. Because the world she came from had no mercy for a woman carrying an Apache's child. But the words stuck. Taza's voice rose, cutting through the whispers. "She left because I failed to protect her. Her blood saved mine once. Her courage raised my son when I could not. None among you will speak her name with dishonor." Even the wind seemed to pause. Koa rose slowly, his cane digging into the earth. "If the spirits have chosen this child as your blood, Taza, then he must be raised in the way of his ancestors. The boy must learn our tongue, our history. He must walk our path." Taza nodded. "He will. I will teach him," Lila's heart pounded. "And me?" she asked quietly. Koa looked at her long and hard. "You are his mother, but you are also the bridge between two worlds that hate each other. If you stay, your place will not be easy." "I don't want easy," she said, her voice steady now. "I just want to stay with my son." The elder's expression softened. "Then you must let the past die, child. You must let go of the name that once carried you. From this day forward, you belong to the people of the Red Earth." Taza turned to her, his dark eyes unreadable. "It means you would live among us, not as a guest. As family." Lila glanced at Samuel, who clung to her skirts, his small face turned up to both of them. "If it means he grows up knowing where he comes from, then yes." Taza stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, tentative, reverent. "The spirits gave me a son," he murmured. "Perhaps they are giving me back more than that." Her lips parted, but before she could speak, the council began chanting, an old Apache song for rebirth and belonging. The fire crackled higher, sparks dancing like tiny spirits in the wind. Lila looked up through the smoke and sky, her heart trembling. For the first time in years, she wasn't running. She was standing still, between the man she had once loved and the son who bound them forever. The warrior had claimed his blood. Now the woman would have to decide if she still had the courage to claim her heart. Weeks passed, but peace did not come easily. Lila lived among the Apache now, not as a captive, but not yet as one of them either. The women watched her when she fetched water. The children whispered and followed her son as though he were a rare bird. Some of the elders treated her with cautious respect, but others still called her Nadali. Outsider Taza, however, stood firm in her defense. Whenever the people questioned her, his words silenced them. He had made it known that she and Samuel were his family, bound by both spirit and blood. Yet for Lila, belonging was not something that could be commanded. It had to be earned. Each morning she rose before the sun, helping grind corn, gather herbs, and tend to the horses. Koa's daughter taught her the old language, and though her tongue stumbled, she tried. She wanted Samuel to hear her speak the words of his father's people, to see her fight for a place in both his worlds. At night, when the campfires burned low, Taza would come to her tent. Sometimes he brought food, sometimes silence. The nearness of him always brought a stirring she had tried to bury, the echo of the nights they had shared long ago, when their love had been reckless, desperate, and free. One night, when the moon was high and silver over the canyon, he came without a word and stood watching her as she brushed Samuel's hair. "You work hard," he said softly. "I have to," she replied, not turning. "If I don't, they'll never see me as anything more than the white woman who ran away." Taza stepped closer, his voice rough. "They already see more. They see a woman who returned when she could have stayed hidden. They see the mother of my son." Her hand stilled. "Your son," she whispered. It still feels strange to hear it. He crouched beside her, the firelight catching in his dark eyes. "Does it shame you?" "No," she said quickly. "It terrifies me, because now that you know, I'm afraid of what comes next." Taza looked down at Samuel, who had fallen asleep against her lap. "When I thought he was gone, I buried my heart with him. You gave it back." She lifted her gaze to him. "And what if your people don't forgive me? What if they never see us as worthy of your name?" He leaned closer, his voice deep and sure. "Then I will remind them that blood remembers. And so does love," her breath caught. The words wrapped around her like the warmth of the fire. For a moment all the fear fell away, and she saw not the chief or the warrior, but the man who had once laughed with her beneath desert rain, who had whispered promises in a language she hadn't yet understood. Then he reached out, his fingers brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. "Stay with me tonight," he said. Lila's heart raced. "You know what they'll say." "They already say it," he murmured. "Let them." The world outside seemed to disappear, the whispering winds, the flicker of distant fires. For a heartbeat, there was only the sound of their breathing, the nearness of the past coming alive again. But before she could speak, a sound split the night, a low rhythmic drumming echoing through the valley. Both froze. Taza stood sharply, every muscle tense. "That's not our drum." Lila rose, clutching Samuel to her. "What does it mean?" His eyes hardened. "It means the world beyond our camp is coming." The drums grew louder, steady, deliberate like a heartbeat of war, and in that instant, Lila understood. Her greatest test had not been to find her place among the Apache. It was to protect the family she had just reclaimed from the world that sought to destroy it. The dawn broke not with birdsong, but with the thunder of hooves. Dust rose on the horizon, riders in blue coats and tan hats, the U.S. cavalry moving fast across the mesa. The Apache camp stirred into chaos. Women gathered children, warriors reached for their weapons, and the old chants of battle filled the air like wind before a storm. Lila clutched Samuel to her chest. Her breath came in short gasps as she saw the soldiers' banners cresting the ridge. They were coming for her, she knew it. The army had never stopped hunting her, the woman who had vanished with the child of an Apache chief. Taza emerged from his tent, already painted for war, his face streaked with red ochre. His bow and rifle were slung across his back, and his gaze was locked on the approaching cavalry. "They followed you," he said quietly, not in accusation, but in truth. Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean to lead them here. I thought I was safe." He touched her cheek, firm but gentle. "You are safe, because this time I will not let them take what is mine." Before she could answer, Koa's voice rose above the camp. "Warriors, take your places. Women to the canyon shelter." Taza turned to her. "Go, take Samuel. Hide where the rocks meet the river. Do not come out until I find you." Lila shook her head. "I can't leave you." He met her gaze, fierce and unyielding. "You must. Our son needs you." Those words struck her deeper than any command. She nodded, kissed his hand, and fled toward the canyon with Samuel, her heart breaking with every step. Behind her, the battle began. The crack of rifles split the air, mingled with the haunting cry of Apache warriors charging from the ridges. Smoke rose. Horses screamed. The soldiers had not expected the tribe's strength or their fury. Lila crouched behind the rocks, clutching Samuel close. He was trembling but silent, his small hands gripping her dress. Every gunshot felt like it tore through her heart. Through the haze of dust, she saw Taza, a figure of fire and motion, leading his warriors through the chaos. He fought like a man with everything to lose, but numbers overwhelmed even the bravest. The cavalry began to press forward. She saw one soldier raise his rifle toward Taza's back. Without thinking, she ran. Her body moved before her mind could protest. She screamed his name and threw herself across the open ground. The soldier turned, startled, and fired. The shot grazed her arm, spinning her to the ground, but her cry had been enough. Taza turned, killed the man in a flash, and then was at her side. "Lila." He dropped to his knees, pulling her close. "Why did you—" She pressed her hand against his chest. "Because you would have done the same." Then a new sound broke through the chaos, Koa's voice rising above the battle in a chant older than memory. The old man stood on the ridge, raising a staff wrapped in red cloth. "The blood remembers," he cried. "Protect the circle." The words seemed to ignite something in the warriors. They rallied, driving the soldiers back toward the ridge. Within an hour, the battle was done, the cavalry retreating into the desert, leaving behind silence and the smell of smoke. Taza lifted Lila into his arms and carried her back to camp. Her wound was shallow, but she was pale, trembling. "You are bleeding," he whispered. She smiled faintly. "Only a little. The blood remembers, doesn't it?" He looked at her for a long time, then kissed her forehead. "It remembers everything." Later, when the camp began to rebuild, Lila stood at the edge of the canyon with Samuel. The boy looked up at her. "Mama," he said softly, "are we Apache or white?" She smiled through her tears. "We are both. We are the bridge the world forgot, but the blood remembered." Behind them, Taza approached, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. Together, they looked out across the red desert, where smoke still drifted into the sunrise. It had taken years of pain, loss, and faith, but the circle had been restored. The blood had remembered, and finally so had love.